Hello, my friends. I hope you're doing well. I want to talk a little bit about doing inner child work. And the reason this is coming up for me is because in last week's podcast that I did, episode number 12, in case you haven't listened to it, I talk about how people feel very uncomfortable asking for help. And I talk about how we need to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable and asking for help. And the reason for that is because it opens us up to being vulnerable. And being vulnerable allows us to have deeper and more meaningful relationships with ourselves and with the people in our lives. But that also triggered something in my inner child, and I had some reactivity with my little girl inside me. And it's that whole asking for help aspect. I realized that at some point in my childhood, I didn't feel comfortable asking for help. And I felt like maybe I needed to figure it out on my own. I was maybe made to feel ashamed or embarrassed that I needed to ask for help on something. And that little girl has held on to that. Now, if you haven't done a lot of inner child work, I don't even really know much about it. It's basically having or creating a relationship with that little child inside of us that has been traumatized in some way or another. And it could be little t trauma or big T trauma, or in some way it's been shaped. We were all shaped by our parents and our teachers and society as we grow up. And sometimes we hang on to those behaviors and actions and those coping mechanisms that we develop as children. And that's what they are. They're coping mechanisms, and they're ways to survive, and there are ways to get through the world in our own childlike way. Now, with inner child work, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to go back all the way and regress and figure out, who did this to you and why and all these things. But it's about acknowledging the fact that you were a child at one point in time, and at some point in time, you felt unsafe in doing something, or in speaking your truth, or in being seen or heard. And it's reconnecting with that inner child as an adult and making that inner child feel safe and secure, and knowing that now you're in control because you're an adult and you know what you're doing, and they no longer need to be scared. And so when I was talking in my podcast about asking for help and getting vulnerable about it, it made the little girl inside me react a little bit. And so I wanted just to talk a little bit about what I do when that happens, and acknowledging that little person inside of me and making them feel safe. And one of the things I do talk about in my podcast episode number 2, I go through an exercise that I've developed for connecting with that inner child. But the premise of that is remembering an incident or an instant in our life that made us feel really unsafe or uncomfortable for some reason, and going through a process where we accept that inner child, and we actually talk to that little boy or that little girl inside of us and tell them how much we love them and how much we accept them. And this week, what I've been doing is I've actually been looking at a picture of myself as a little girl, and I just have it in a frame, and it sits in my office. But I took it down, and I just, here's me, I'm kind of dressed up, I think, in this picture. I was playing dress up. But every night this week, I've been looking at this little girl, the picture, and I've just been sending her a lot of love. And I've just been telling her how brave she was for being so responsible, and how much she is safe right now, and how I am in control right now. And it's really amazing just looking at that picture of that little girl and just looking into her eyes, just doing that for a few minutes every day, and just sending out so much love and compassion, and even forgiveness. Because I think sometimes we hang on to thinking that what we did was wrong or not right for us. And I think forgiving that little child for doing what they did, and letting them know that what they did was 100% right and correct for them, but they don't have to feel unsafe or uncomfortable anymore. So that's something that I've been doing this week. And I'm wondering if maybe that's something that you can try as well, especially if you are feeling uncomfortable or unsafe, or maybe there's just something inside of you that's feeling a little bit insecure. Sometimes it is that inner child that just wants to get out, and they just need to be heard, and they need to be loved, and they need to be held. And sometimes even just visualizing that you are giving that your inner child a hug is really helpful as well. So those are a couple of things that I do when I feel some reactivity or triggering from my inner child. And I just want to reassure her that she's okay. So those are my thoughts for today. I hope that you have a really wonderful day and a really wonderful rest of the week, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.